Yesterday, the Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull shed some tears. It was during an interview with Stan Grant for his new program on NITV, in which he was reflecting on the use of Ngunnawal language a couple of weeks ago here in Parliament. When the Prime Minister was tabling the Close the Gap report, he spoke of a recording that he'd heard of a woman speaking in Ngunnawal language. Have a look.
It's an interesting story. She was a very old lady, and she remembers her mother singing this to her. And the thing that's so sad is to imagine that mother singing that story to her, at a time when you were losing culture, and the last thing that baby was safe.
Liberal MP Ken Wyatt, the only Indigenous member of the lower house, certainly says that is the Malcolm Turnbull that he knows, speaking on these issues. He's also welcomed the Prime Minister's commitment during that interview to go ahead with the referendum on constitutional recognition for Indigenous Australians next year in 2017. I spoke to Ken Wyatt a little earlier. Ken Wyatt, thanks for your time. The Prime Minister has now committed to having a referendum next year in 2017. This is something that you've supported for a long time. How realistic is it, though, at the moment?
Look, I think at this stage we've got to be optimistic, and I think the timeline's real, because once we bed down the words, then it's a case of the public awareness and the campaign that will go with that.
And bedding down the words, of course, is the difficult part here. I mean, when do you expect that to be done?
Look, I suspect that by the end of June, mid-July, the report will come back, and then there'll be a set of words that the Prime Minister can play with, look at, and then between he and the Leader of the Opposition, and I would hope the Leader of the Greens, would then have an agreement as to what those set of words would be.
Of course, we don't know when the election will be, and I'm assuming you don't either, but would you like the words out there before an election? Or does that not really factor in? That
doesn't factor in, although what I'd hate to see happen is for those words to be mixed up in the political debate.
During the campaign? During
the campaign, because once you get that, the campaign underway, then people are focusing on what it is that we are putting forward in the way of reforms, or what are the policies, and they're wanting to discern between those as opposed to the words of recognition.
We saw some emotion from Malcolm Turnbull talking about the Ngunnawal language and the recording that he'd heard. I mean, did that surprise you that it affected the Prime Minister so deeply?
No, because I've seen the same for... I've been fortunate. I've watched Kevin Rudd, I've watched Julia Gillard, I heard the Redfern speech by Paul Keating, certainly Tony Abbott, the former Prime Minister, and Malcolm have all demonstrated a high degree of compassion and emotion when they've talked on issues that have gone close to what I deem as the emotional intelligence that they all have. And it's good to see that those stories do touch the heart.
Linda Burney, the New South Wales Deputy Labor leader, has put a hand up for the federal seat of Barton. If she wins it, she'd become the first female Indigenous MP in the lower house. Would you like to see that?
Look, I've known Linda for a long time. We've done a lot of work together in education. It'd be great to have her there. It'd be great to have another colleague, even though she's on the other side.
I don't know if you'd be campaigning for her in Barton, but...
No, I certainly wouldn't be campaigning for her. But look, when she enters the federal arena, I think Linda will be an incredible asset to not only the Parliament but to the Labor Party by having a very strong, courageous Indigenous woman who has spoken her mind on many issues, but equally has considered her constituents in all the work that she does.
Final question just on another matter, the Safe Schools program. I see you made some comments about this. It didn't come up in your party room meeting today, despite, well, I think it did last week, and a number of your colleagues have real concerns about this anti-bullying campaign. What's your message to them?
Well, my message this morning was, look, schools are well placed to make some judgments, but they've got to involve the parents, because what we're asking is for teachers to do the parenting role in many senses. Bullying is part of what I used to deal with as a teacher in the classroom and within the school ground. But there are some other issues, I think, that sit within the domain of parents, because you want teachers to teach and teach the skills that are needed for their future, not to cover just all the social issues, but equally you can't walk away from individuals who are caught in the conundrum that Safe Schools program is targeting in that context.
So you don't have a problem with what you've seen in the program?
I think there are some elements of it, depending on who's teaching it and how it's being taught, I think is problematic. If there's not consistency in straightforward messaging, then that's a problem. I personally would rather see it in the domain of parents, but certainly if the school's going to put the program in place, allow parents to make a choice as to whether their child participates, because I think that's an important element. I don't know of any parents really who don't value the fact that they want to influence their children. They want to be the principal source of learning around those social issues. But equally, and I'm not hedging my bets here, but teachers also are often asked to provide answers to children on those matters as well.
Ken Wyatt, thanks for joining us this afternoon.
No, it's a pleasure. It's great to be here again.